let's get going here and let's introduce ourselves. And I'm just going to work clear across the board. I'm George Kirby, 10th on Budoshin Jujitsu in Santa Cruz, California. Been doing this for 55 years. Still love it. Joni, you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, I'm from Finland. I live in Tampere and I have my own style, Kyokai Jujitsu 610, and then also I'm a member of Budoshin Jujitsu Uransakai.
Okay, Dave.
I started when I was 12.
I'm Dave Clark from outside Tampa, Florida, and fourth on Budoshin Jujitsu, Shodan, and karate.
Okay, Darren.
Darren Mellerine, New Orleans, Louisiana. Been studying traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu since 1989.
Okay.
Holding rank in Manami-ryu and Budoshin.
Okay. And our newest guest is Francis.
Yes. My host rank is Shodan in Shorinji Kempo, but I've been inspired by your humble self for quite a few decades. I've got an enduring love for jiu-jitsu, but no rank in it as yet, in anything basically, and studied a bit of Daito Ryu.
Okay. And okay, so today's we've got several topics. We won't get through all of them. We never do, but sometimes something comes up in the discussion that becomes a future topic, and that's okay. The first one today, and I don't know even how we're going to handle this one. It may be good to discuss some of the operational aspects of running a dojo, both from business perspective and meeting the needs of the students. And this probably came from, can't think of his name. He's in Burbank. He's usually with us on Saturday mornings. And he used to be one of my, Chris Kadamian. Chris, yes. And so the two questions are, and this is purely hypothetical. How do you see martial arts looking 10 to 20 years from now? What are you doing to, if anything, to improvise or make it possible? Now, I don't know if I'll be around in 10 to 20 years, but
We're planning on it, Sensei.
well,
That what Dave said.
based on family heritage and DNA and genes, so I'm looking at probably another 7 or 8 really good years, and then some Saturday morning I'll be at my Zoom meeting and then I'll disappear. But anyway,
Sensei, we would rather you not put no timelines on it.
we're not. I'm
to the future. How about that?
Yeah, I'll be. Yeah, I plan to be around for a while.
You've always defied the odds, sir. So you'll keep on.
This is too much fun. Okay, so anyone want to start with this topic? Where do you see martial arts in 10 to 20 years? Does anyone want to venture forth on this question?
I guess I'll jump in, Sensei. I don't really have an answer. I guess my response would be really right now is I don't know. You know, the way that I look at it every day, of course, there's evolution in martial arts, and there's evolution in a lot of pieces of martial arts, and every aspect of martial arts, I should say, instead of a lot of pieces. But where would it be in 10, 20 years? You know, looking back, you could see the styles changing in popularity. For me, it's always remained that I have been true to traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. And I've done that for one very specific reason. And I think it's the most practical and realistic form of self-defense that you can possibly be a part of. You know, I feel like, and this may jump off track a little bit, that when I've studied a bunch of different styles, I've practiced a bunch of different styles all over the place, and I've always come back to the one that I know, not that I think. That's a very key point. The one that I know will actually work in real life scenarios is traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and what we do. So where would it be in 10, 20 years? I'm not sure, but I'm sure that even our systems, traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu in itself will continue to evolve to continue to be better in that regard and being the most practical and realistic form of self-defense that you can practice.
Okay, any other thoughts?
I can
Wait,
speak.
Francis,
No, sorry. Let's
Francis,
please
you
let
don't
Mr. Clark go first.
you don't
I'll
have to
go-
raise
I'll
your
go last.
hand. You don't have to raise your hand.
Oh, that's
to
okay.
start talking.
Okay. No, please let Mr. Clark go ahead first.
Oh,
Okay, I'll just speak rather hopefully and say that from the 1990s, we had Taekwondo, which was the most prevalent in the Southeast. I don't know about other parts of the United States. And we also had MMA, which seems to have been prevalent throughout the United States as the go-to primary type of dojo that was easily available. What I like about traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is like Darren says, goes to very practical street use directly. And I see that also in Russian Sistema. I see that in Krav Maga. And one of my favorite expressions I picked up in California one time when I was out there working with you, Sensei, is it's all jujitsu. And I understand that. What I'd like to say is 10 to 20 years from now, hopefully I see a more balanced approach and something that's not as focused on a Taekwondo, which is largely feet fighting, and MMA, which is largely ground fighting, but something that emphasizes a much more balanced approach. And that's what draws me to traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. It's also what's drawn me to study separately Krav Maga and the Russian Sistema.
Yeah, Dave, I have to add a little bit to what you were saying. I agree. You know, when you're looking at either Taekwondo or an MMA encompasses a lot of different things, but what the mass audience or fan of MMA doesn't realize, because they're not educated, just for that simple fact that they don't know what's being done in a caged environment. You know, look, MMA is a sport. It's regulated. You know, it has a referee. It has rules. It's governed by some sort of organization. And jiu-jitsu is not, right? But that doesn't mean that people are doing things in one of those caged environments or combat sport environments that is actually Japanese jiu-jitsu. For the most part, the people that are commentating those events they're not even educated enough to be able to call out or identify what jiu-jitsu is when it's being performed in one of those environments, much less in the street. They don't even see it. They'll actually refer to it, and maybe some of the things are maybe a judo throw or maybe a joint lock, but you know, that may be hidden in some, but you'll see it, I'll see it, you know, everybody on our session here will see it, but to the mass audience, they don't know. So therefore the audience, they never get to grow with what's being performed in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. They just think, oh, that was a judo throw, or oh, that's an arm bar, you know. And then the most common thing in MMA is BJJ, right? So they look at, oh, that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When you go back and when you look at the lineage and the origin of what is Japanese Jiu-Jitsu as the parent art for the majority of martial arts that are out there, BJJ is down the line a bunch. It's just a fraction of what we do. And they refer to it as these things. And, I have this conversation all the time. I've had individual conversations exclusively with Sensei Kirby. And, that gets to me. Like I get very animated about it. Like they don't, because the lineage and the origin of what Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is, people just don't know. And they just think that the lineage and origin would be a BJJ or even judo, even though judo has been around for a long time. And, that's also a sport. And, they created judo, because they couldn't survive continuing to do jiu-jitsu the way they wanted to do it if they had to do it in real life. But, and it is the oldest sport in the Olympics as well. I mean, all of them have credibility somewhere, somehow. And that's not to discredit anyone that's doing BJJ or judo or any other style for that matter. There's some very good technicians out there, very, very, very good practitioners, beyond good. But when you're looking at what the parent art is, when you're looking at what the lineage and the origin of a lot of systems that are out there today, it's Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and people are just, they're not aware, they're not educated enough to understand that.
I agree with a lot of what Darren's saying. And also, doesn't some of this come down to over thousands of years of people fighting? There isn't much that hasn't been done with ways of manipulating the human body. And traditional jiu-jitsu is one path that encompassed a huge number of physical activities. But because it was developed so thoroughly by samurai, or people who had to confront armed opponents wearing armor, it had a certain set of emphases that tended to emphasize joint locks and throws over punching and kicking, because punching and kicking someone in armor wasn't as effective. So because of that path at that time, it became very good at those things. All these sports are adaptations of different paths. That's the way I envision it. Judo, because it eliminates a lot of the nastier aspects of jiu-jitsu, if you want to put them that way, is another way of following that path of what was originally in jiu-jitsu. And BJJ is the same way, with a different emphasis. But I agree with the broader point of Darren, which is you have to be educated in the arts to understand what's going on and what the origins are. And traditional jiu-jitsu has most of the things you're going to be seeing in a lot of these sporting contexts.
Darren, to your point, I agree completely with what you're saying. In one of my books, I actually published the 1.5 pages of items that are not allowed in MMA. And I published them on purpose so I could follow up and say that these rules that exist in these, quote, no holds barred combat cage fights actually are there for the safety of the competitors. So you can't elbow somebody's temple. You can't fish hook. You can't bite. And I looked at the 1.5 pages, and from time to time, I'll have my class look that over. And then I'll say, every single one of these things that is not allowed in sanctioned MMA fights is something that you ought to consider using in a self-defense situation when necessary. So, yeah.
Isn't that so crucial, Dave? That weighs on me a lot during training, in that if I were threatened by several people who were much younger and larger than I was, I would revert to the most extreme defenses, which would include just groin attacks or eye attacks and things that are completely forbidden in any kind of sporting context. Mm-hmm. So how as martial artists do we train for those extreme situations, or do we hesitate at the moment when our life could depend on us being willing to do something really extreme if necessary? That's a huge problem.
Yeah, and Sensei, to kind of try to bring it back around to the original question of where do we see martial arts in 10 or 20 years from now, I think the more education in what you can do in real life self-defense would be very, very, it could be very different if we were to look at it in that regard. However, right now, what I'm seeing is when you look at the popularity of martial arts, MMA is extremely popular because of its foundation, because of its platform, right? And people are very interested in watching, including myself, watching those events. But again, people are just not aware of what's going on. When they start to break it down, and if you look at publications that are out there now, there's the one of the most popular, let's say the most popular styles in mixed martial arts is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because if you don't have a Jiu-Jitsu background on your resume going into those events, look at them. None of them survive. None of them become champions. So if you're exposing yourself by saying, I have zero jiu-jitsu background, then they're completely exposed and they never get to be one of those champions. Now, some of those wrestlers can, they've been there, but they've all had some sort of jiu-jitsu background with it. But now when you take it out of the combat sports arena, and they start to, you have the BJJ systems that are now starting to say, we do self-defense. So the platforms now, or the media now, social media, YouTube, or the mass audience are looking at it and they're trying to figure out how that could be applicable in a real life situation. And they're finding out that it can't be. It's not practical. It's like they're making fun of it. So you're starting to see a shift, a movement, if you will, right? And people are looking for, what is the next? What am I missing? Why are these things that were so dominant in these events? And remember, they're not educated to kind of break it apart and say it's a sporting event. Yeah, it's brutal, but it still is a sporting event. And just like everyone just had mentioned just now, talking about, we could do all of these other things in real life, but you can't do it in a sporting event. So they're exposing the BJJ stuff for what they're calling, hey, we're great not only in the sporting environment, but we're great in self-defense as well. And it's just not practical. So they're being exposed for that. The one direction that I kind of really don't care for, what I see kind of martial arts moving into, is people are one, the good thing about it is, to kind of hold off on that, is I'm kind of liking the exposure of the BJJ thing, right? Because I think that as people continue to look for what is practical, real life self-defense, there's an opportunity for the traditional Japanese martial artists, such as in all of ourselves here, that can now, we could, for the first time ever, I feel like in modern day, capitalize on being able to say, here's the system, right? This is the most valuable thing, not for the biggest, strongest, or fastest, but for any person. And these are the reasons why. So that's the plus. The bad side is, I think there's another piece of martial arts that's being publicized and marketed that I really don't care for. And what I see in it is really just a lot of gymnastics. And look, if anybody does that, that's not a shot at anyone, but I don't know where that's self-defense. I don't know I don't know how that could even be applied in self-defense. When somebody is just doing all of these backhand springs, front flips, back flips, and then they're coming out with a kick on something, I don't get it. Look, I've had my fair share of real life situations, and I've never seen anything close to that being practical or work in any way, shape, or form. And so that's gaining ground in a whole well, and I really don't care for that part.
You can get a good place in a Hollywood movie for that.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I was just going to quickly add, totally agree with Darren's main point here. Going into any martial arts study, you ought to be, or your parents ought to be savvy enough to ask the question, why is my child taking this Taekwondo class or this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class? And if they want to use it for self-defense at school or anywhere, what are the possible limitations of it? And it's tragic to think of somebody spending 15 years getting some advanced degree in martial art that has huge limitations like Taekwondo, traditional Taekwondo, that may eliminate the study of joint locks or any other things than punching and kicking. And the same goes for grappling arts, not doing enough punching and kicking themselves. So it just goes into the question of why am I doing this, or why is my child doing this? Something like a weapons art like Iaido, which I've done, there's no practical application of it. It's more, there's a spiritual aesthetic, meditative quality to it. So it's completely removed from self-defense. So it's all about, why are you doing this? And continuing that questioning, the questioning that BJJ has come under, I think is very healthy. All this questioning of its limitations, all that's healthy for the progress of martial arts in general and what we're trying to do with them.
If I can get a word in edgewise here, and it's a great conversation. I'm enjoying it. Just to make a couple comments. One of the things I learned way back from Seki was, if you have multiple attackers, you have two choices. I mean, the third one is run, but first choice is run or whatever. But if the confrontation does become physical, you can either entrap one person and use them as a shield as you try to escape, or you inflict as much physical damage as you can to the first attacker to hopefully intimidate the others. Now, I don't know whether that's reasonable self-defense or not, but those are really the alternatives. With respect to where things are going to be. I mean, I've been around long. I've seen Kung Fu come and go. I've seen 3 or 4 other period martial arts come and go. Right now, there's an MMA dojo on every street corner. There are in the park dojo, there's maybe 2 or 3 dojos within 100, 200 yards of the dojo, other martial arts. I mean, they're like ants. And that has nothing to do with the quality of instruction. It's just the popularity. And as Darren has said, is that, when push comes to shove, it's traditional jujitsu. And I think that's, as Darren said, that is our opportunity. Because they say, well, now we're teaching self-defense. All I can say is, I've had several students in street situations. They have never had to go to the ground. It's been over in 5 to 7 seconds. And if you can defend yourself while standing up, all martial arts training can do is improve your chances of survival. And that, to me, is a chief advantage of jiu-jitsu, because it gives you the flexibility to align your response to the situation. I think all of us, if we wanted to, if a person swung at us, we could take them out, theoretically, and they would never get up again. But the situation that you're in may cause you to do different things. It may just be throw them, it may be plant them through the concrete, it may be simply putting them into a control hold, and that is the advantage of jiu-jitsu, because many of these other arts contain elements of jiu-jitsu, because, as Darren said, as Thomas said, jiu-jitsu is a parent art. And I think that's what we have to stress, is that, and as I tell my students the first night, it's going to take you longer to learn, and maybe longer to get your black belt in here than any other martial art, current martial art. But my other goal is to have you develop an effective system of self-defense suited to your capabilities. And that's what jiu-jitsu can do. So I think, as Darren said, these are the things we need to push. If I took all of you, even Francis, who's maybe not a jiu-jitsu person, which is okay, and I took all of you and say, okay, do something for a hit, and I could probably find another 20 black belts, and we'd line everybody up, say, do something for a hit. Every one of you would do something different. If I said do something for a bear hug, all of you would probably do something different. That's okay. because you're doing what works for you. And I think that's the real asset of the art. So that's
So
what
traditional jiu-jitsu is effective. I have a father he's over 70 and has Parkinson. I actually learned him to defend him with a stick, just 3 moves. And me being a young guy, I couldn't actually take him down when he defended himself with the stick. I also trained some Kenjutsu. So the traditional art is effective, even if you have AIDS or disabilities. So it's very effective techniques.
okay. Yeah, I think, you know, it's one of the nice things about jujitsu is its flexibility. And that to me is its real asset. Several days ago, someone sent me a video of a sumo match, and they wanted to know the name of the technique that was used to get one of the 2 competitors out of the circle. And of course, he lost the match as a result of that. And he couldn't figure out what the name was. So I did a stop motion of that part of the match. And it was just a Heiji Shimiwaza elbow roll takedown done backwards. Okay. And not the technique was done backwards, but rather than pushing the elbow up and over, the winning sumo wrestler grabbed over and pulled the arm up with his other hand. And that caught, the person was off balance anyway. The match was over. Now, would that work on the street? I don't know. But I said, you know, this is the technique that was used. And I think the point is we see basic jujitsu stuff in almost any other martial art. With respect to BJJ and MMA, they've been around for probably longer than most other arts. I don't know whether it's because they appeal to the relatively young macho male, or whether they appeal to you know, people who like to wrestle on the ground. I don't want to reduce it to such. I've seen some interesting videos of BJJ and MMA people wrestling with joint maneuverable dummies, not live dummies, but foam dummies, and this month's Kokoro deals with that matter. It's coming out on the 1st, but I think there are assets that we have as jujitsuka that we really need to push, rather than saying maybe, oh, it's the art has been around for 2,000-3,000 years. Because, and I hate to say this about Americans, Americans want quickie solutions. Okay. We want to have quick fixes. And so we have to, if we're going to advertise and push jujitsu, we have to come up with stuff that people can relate to easily, rather than saying, yes, tradition jujitsu is 2,000 years old, it's going to take many years to learn, you'll eventually find something that works for you, yada yada yada. And I'm not saying this stuff negatively, but if we say we're going to give you a personal self-defense system, it's easy to learn. Yes, you can earn ranks at the same time. It will improve your self-confidence. We need to be positive, the positive things that jiu-jitsu can do for you. And that, I think, is what we, if we're going to push this, that's how you have to push it. A lot of karate dojos, taekwondo, Muay Thai, whatever you want to call it, come under the general category of karate. And I know there are many. One of their big things, especially with young people, is saying, will help your child develop their self-confidence. And parents want that for their kids. That's the number one thing parents want for their kids, is to be self-confident. because that's, you know, as adults, that's your key to success. Knowledge is helpful, but self-confidence allows you to use that knowledge. So, you know, anyway, we have a couple of other people who've joined us who haven't said anything yet. So we have Eric Selly.
Yes, I'm back.
And,
Hello, gentlemen. How's everybody doing?
That's great.
And Eric is in Burbank. He's one of my showdowns. He and Chris have been in my park class for the past couple of weeks. I hope you're having a good time.
Oh, we're having a great time.
They have a little more mat space, but anyway. Any comments on this, Eric?
Well, I don't know what the question is, but just hearing the gist of the conversation and trying to push jujitsu, traditional jujitsu versus other martial arts. And you have the basically what you have is you have the sportive aspect of martial arts, and you have the self-defense aspect of martial arts. With that said, if you were to break down Japanese jiu-jitsu, traditional jiu-jitsu, what art does it have? It has karate, it has judo, it has aikido, it has a little bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it has a little bit of it has a little bit of everything, and it's all rolled into one martial art. That is why it takes such a long time to master. You have so many different techniques that you're learning, and it's really a whole complete martial art. There's self-defense against weapons, whether stick, knife, firearms, even the Londo handbow. Now, what about the bow, the much longer, like 6-foot staff? I'm not sure if that's in our curriculum. I'm sure we can make it work. But with that said, jiu-jitsu is a very complete martial art. And the other aspect of martial arts is sport. What a lot of people are looking for is pressure testing. And sport martial arts, whether it's Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, those are usually Muay Thai and BJJ are usually in MMA because they are proven. The pressure testing is what people are looking for. If you can apply these techniques under stress, under pressure, against an opponent that wants to hurt you, then those are the techniques that are going to come out in a self-defense street scenario. So all the push hooking, eye gouging, and so on, all of that is trainable. It really is. It's just you just have you can't train it in full speed. Like I'm going here, there's an eye gouge, and injure and maim your uke, your training partners. They're not going to come back. But doing it slowly, it's all repetitive motion. I have this. Okay, now I can move on to the next one, and just move on. It's muscle memory that you're building up. It's not just muscle memory, but also what's that phrase? Your attribute building. You're building these attributes. So if you do this, oh, what's here? There's an eye gouge. This can be a back fist. You're building on all of these movements into your art. Incorporate that into self-defense or jiu-jitsu, and it will be there. So that's pretty much my take on all of this. You do have the sport, you do have the self-defense. I believe both are very effective. You have the sport, it was really great for pressure testing your martial art. The self-defense and being able to pressure test that aspect of your martial art is great. This is what Sensei Kirby had done for Christopher and I, is that starting at the brown belt or thank you level, we start to do a bit more freestyle. But now we're playing around with what's going to come out in if Christopher were to try to tackle me, what am I going to do? What if he throws a hard right punch? Am I going to block it? Am I going to get under it? What am I going to do? That's part of the pressure testing. And yeah, is you have the pressure testing, being able to pressure test. That is the number one thing that a lot of people are looking for. You have the different martial arts that are already incorporated into jujitsu. One of the things that has helped me to speed up my jujitsu learning is I've taken judo. But there's a lot of throws, there's a lot of groundwork, there's a lot of kazushi. All of these are fundamentals, the foundational to my learning in Budoshin Jujitsu, and that is part of what sped up my learning process in Budoshin Jujitsu, as well as being very interested in this art for years, and I finally found it. But you have these martial arts that are separate from jujitsu. If you have experience in these, and then you combine it, you have jujitsu. And now if you're learning the actual jujitsu, your speeding process will be a lot faster. That is something that I have experience with. So that is my take on this conversation so far.
Anybody else want to throw anything? Pardon the pun. Anybody else want to throw anything else in there before we go on to the next topic?
Sure.
Sure, if we have time.
Sure.
So, yeah, we've got. I reflect. My experiences reflect pretty much what everyone has said. I guess to answer where things end up in the future, it's going to look a lot like Budoshin Jujitsu, and indeed, it's becoming that way. To go back, I think, to something that someone said about the Olympics. The old sport was Pangration, and it was basically ancient jiu-jitsu. Plato used to say, this ground fighting stuff isn't any useful for combat. So we've been through this cycle before many a time, but things seem to be moving towards more of what Budoshin is doing. And I think we're going to see that probably even 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
I am hopeful. I mean, I know when I was young.
Yes, I'm just reminded of one other thing. Lately, but the trend that I am seeing nowadays is a lot of people are looking for tradition. You had say MMA gyms or BJJ gyms. BJJ has some tradition. Same thing for Muay Thai. They have their own tradition. But in general, a lot of people are looking for this traditional aspect of martial art, being like you have your bows, you have your respect, you have this. I guess you could call it a spiritual aspect of martial art that is incorporated with traditional martial arts. Unlike, say, in MMA gym, where you come in, you train, you get out. And in traditional martial arts, there's an actual community, and that is something that a lot of people are they're missing, and that's what they're looking for. So that's another aspect, much as we forgot to touch on that people are looking for.
Okay. Any other thoughts here?
I wanted to mention one thing, just mentioned in passing a while back about, this is not necessarily instant, that there's a lot to learn here and it could take a long time, which is of course true. There's also the techniques that are rather instant and are very simple and can be used immediately. My favorite example is a 4.5-hour course, The Art and Chaos, that I have done every 6 months or so until COVID. And a 13-year-old learned a brown belt uranagi in that class. She was reticent, didn't want to be there. But grandmother told me the story. After class, she took that technique she learned that morning. When her father came up behind her, put her in a forearm choke, she went into that technique. And as her father's saying, you didn't learn that much in that self-defense class this morning, did you? She put him on his rear end and scampered away. She used the technique exactly the way she learned it in class. And so something that's that simple and that effective surprised Dad, and I gave the family a laugh. And you think, as a teacher, it's gratifying because yes, there is a lot to learn here, and there's a lifetime and then some of information. And yet, a lot of the techniques we teach are not as highly evolved as doing a hip throw well. This technique is an example of instant gratification.
Yeah, I think, and I'm just teaching as a sense of thing. Sometimes students because of their ignorance, and I don't mean it as a negative comment towards them, but we all are ignorant of things. Because of their ignorance of how the art works, I don't know if that's the correct word, they put too much work into doing a technique. And that many times is what is frustrating to them, is, because they don't know any better. When I was in 7th grade physical ed, 1958, almost a century ago, God, my first PE coach was Coach Range, who stood like 6 feet, 20 inches. And the first thing he said to us, he says, I can work with dumb, but I don't work with stupid. A dumb person doesn't know any better. A stupid person knows better, but does dumb things anyway. He says, so don't go stupid on me and we'll be okay. And that stuck with me all my life. And I ran into him again in high school when he transferred to the high school. And he turned out to be a really, how do you say, knowledgeable, decent person. I mean, I was totally intimidated when I was 12 years old, whatever it was. But that saying just means so much that it transformed how I perceived dumb and stupid. And I will never tell my students they're dumb. They may not know any better. And I think that's what he meant by dumb. And just don't do stupid stuff. I mean, and as students learn to do things correctly, they find out that it really does take a lot less effort. And that's our key, or key, depending upon how you want to spell the word. And that to me is the hardest thing to get students to do, and I see
Halloween is close.
someone's getting ready for Halloween.
Halloween is close in Finland.
Okay. a bit of skullduggery.
Yeah. My father came in.
Right. Anyway.
Yeah, just for the Halloween clothes for the Halloween party.
Yeah.
So.
He's, with the hair, is it a he or a she?
Yeah, it's a she.
It's a she.
my
Okay.
daughter.
Anyway, very good. So let's go on to the next topic here. Your daughter looks much better without the skull over her.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
That is.
okay. Is Dad taking good care of you?
Täytyy kysyä, pitääkö isi hyvää huolta? Sano yes.
Yes.
Okay, good, good, good.
With a green. Yes, with a green.
Okay, next question. What do you see as the role of martial arts organizations as being? What, if anything, do you think should change? How do you see martial arts organizations? What should they be doing? And you can pick any organization you want, or you can just say generally. Or do we want to, any thoughts or?
I don't know, personally,
What would
I
your
think,
ideal martial arts organization do? Put it that way. That's a simpler way of putting it.
so I would say maybe set a good example as a role model, be more focused in community rather than competition, that sort of thing. And I guess it is in a lot of areas, perhaps what you're doing, but certainly not where we are here. It tends to be more MMA focused competition, a lot of misunderstanding about the purpose of martial arts. So I guess more contribution to the community, something like that, I guess.
Okay.
Public safety works, that sort of thing.
Anything else or? Okay,
I want to say martial arts organizations. Let's say for jiu-jitsu, right? Martial arts organizations should be organized. It's you gotta be able to have to have events, whether it's sporting events, it's a demonstration event. You want to start building a community around these martial arts, and being able to have like you're holding these. If a dojo is a part of this organization, you're holding these dojos accountable for not only the students and the sensei, but also teaching requirements. What are they teaching? Is this allowable, or or are they teaching something that's not really practical, like the super long, drawn out jiu-jitsu moves, and you're calling it practical when it's really not? It's being very stringent with the dojos. And what else would do you think they should do? Is bringing to light other martial arts and dojos within that realm. Let's say if it's jiu-jitsu, okay, how many other arts of jiu-jitsu are there? We have Budoshin, we have Danzan Ryu, we have a few others, and just bring everything under that umbrella. So that's what I think a martial arts organization can do.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, or do we want to just leave this topic as it is, and move on?
Yes.
Next topic is a fun topic. Okay. Body language. Just to preface it, what we need to define what body language is. Okay. And that's simply because I had an email conversation with Scott Anderson over the past couple of days because he couldn't be here to today's meeting. And he took body language to how you can, if you're doing judo, how the other person's body positions can tell you what he's going to do, or what position his body has to be in to learn so that you can execute certain techniques. And to an extent that is body language, but what I was, as I explained, what I was looking for was, I'm looking at it more in terms of self-defense. What does a, number one, there are two areas. What does a criminal look for in a person walking down the street that would make them a good victim? And two, from the other end, what can you do as a martial artist? How do you, what are things that you can see in a potential attacker's body language that may indicate what he's going to do? And how can you, using your body language, intimidate that person without any actual physical interaction? Which is an all, those are totally different things from, you have to see a person's body position to see what techniques you can do. And that applies in any martial art, I think. Whether it be BJJ or Muay Thai or Taekwondo or Judo or Aikido or Jiu-Jitsu, what they're doing really determines what we can do. Unless you're just going to haul off and attack them. So anyway, does anybody want to start with things to look? Someone can start this from any of the, either what makes a good victim, what's the body language of a potential attacker, what things can you look for, and three, what can you do in terms of body language that might intimidate or defuse an attacker without any actual physical contact taking place?
Sensei, I'll go ahead and jump in with to kind of wrap up some of that stuff, what I believe would be summed up in 2 words. And I think that would stimulate some additional conversation, including me picking up some of the comments on the back end after some other comments made. But whether you're a victim or not, the 2 words that would be vital would be situational awareness. And that with that, you can absolutely determine body language. And I'll pause just so I can hear some other comments. I'll probably jump back in.
Okay, anybody else want to throw anything in there?
Is it right to be confident? Is it the right way to be confident and so you are nice, or are you confident and so you are serious? What do people think is the right way? Do you want to show you are serious? If you hurt me, I hurt you back. Or are you confident and just nice and okay, let's it go, and being slow and nice? What do people think? Should you be confident and nice, or confident and angry or determined?
Okay, I think you hit one of the nails square in the head, is that if you look like you know where you're going, you look confident, that is a, how do you say, that's not a good indicator for a potential attacker. That's one factor. Anything else?
Yes, when it comes to body language and self-defense, there's a lot that we can that goes into it. Number one, if you're being confronted by somebody, you can easily read their body language to find out are they serious with this confrontation? Are they really going to attack you? If so, how are they going to attack you? How are they standing? You look at the eyes. Are they looking directly at you? Are they piercing right through you? Are they glistening? Are they standing squared, just pushing you, or are they standing off to the side? That's a punch waiting to happen usually, and that is if someone is confronting you. So now let's look at it from the good guy perspective. What are you doing? Are your hands in front of you? some of it is defensive posturing, but it's also body language. We're here. I'm basically balled up. I'm quartered away. My hands are in front of me. I'm not like this. I'm not ready to fight. My hands are in front of me. Please, sir. I don't want any trouble. I'm backing away from the fight. Not only is the body language showing the bystanders and video cameras if it ever shows up, and it will. You're showing that you're defensive. You're backing away, and you're not starting this fight. The person take a swing. Guess what? You're already ready for a fight to defend yourself. Push them away and get out. So body language is a large part of it. And thirdly is what about you just walking down the street, and do you look like you're absolutely angry when you're walking? Do you look like you're very timid and scared? Are you looking around very nervously? These are cues that other people can pick up, and just it can either make you a target or people steer clear of you. So body language, as a self-defense, I believe body language is a big part of self-defense. It's your initial reaction or your initial contact to being either confronted or not.
Anybody else? Okay, as far as indicators for good victims, if you want to look at this through the eyes of an attacker, usually, as somebody said, if you're walking with confidence and you look like you know where you're going, you're not a good choice. If you're walking at a normal speed, you're not a good choice. Whereas if you're shuffling your feet, or as I've seen a number of old people, that have their arms crossed, like they're afraid, they're walking alone. If you're walking, your body posture is such that you're both your hands are facing backwards, that basically means that you're slump shouldered, which is bad posture, which means there may be something else going on. What else is there? If you're overweight, which means you can't run fast. What else can I say? If you're clutching your possessions, purse, bag of groceries, or what have you. The other extreme is if you're walking in a complete lackadaisical manner, like you're a total airhead, you're a good target.
Yeah, Sensei, I think all the things that you're mentioning are areas where that would give the body language to a potential attacker that you are an easy target. Which
Right,
is
that's an easy target, and
right.
a lot of these things, once people are aware of it, they can change their behavior mannerism and reduce their chances of being a victim. I'll always tell you, if I have to work with a group of older people, I'll say, walk in groups. How are you, if you're wearing a handbag, how are you wearing it? What are you wearing? There are a lot of things you can do by your appearance to reduce your chances of being a victim. Anyone can do that. As far as attackers are concerned, Eric brought up a lot of the characteristics that you look for, what they are going to do. You can get, one of the first things Seki taught was, and it's a really old judo rule. Because someone this week I said, well, someone that's going to attack you, you have to see what their eyes are doing. And Seki's concept was watch their shoulders. because their shoulders will tell you what their body is going to do. Eyes can be, I know eyes can be intimidating, and they can be staring, and they're, as Eric showed, there are various ways a person can be staring, quote unquote, staring you down, so to speak. And they're all legitimate if you let them intimidate you. I had a bad habit when I had to work at one of the schools I was at, where we had a high school and adult gang members coming on campus. One of our most effective techniques was simply to look through their head. They knew I was looking through their eyes, but they didn't know where I was looking. And they would turn their head around to see what was going on behind them almost every time. And then they'd ask, "What are you looking at?" So eye contact or eye non-contact can be extremely effective.
Sensei, when you say eye contact, I know Eric mentioned it as well, but that approach actually needs to have some sort of understanding behind it, right? Because eye contact may not necessarily be a bad thing, but it can also show a form of aggression. And
Yes.
a lot, whether it's a gang member or just on the streets of New Orleans, if you maintain that eye contact, then that is an absolute threat. That is an absolute aggression. And then that would initiate some sort of additional, or provoke some sort of additional act by that individual. So you really truly have to understand what you're doing with the eye contact,
Right. This,
when that happens.
the situation determines it. I've been in situations where I've just looked across, just three or four people, and one will say, "Who are you looking at? What are you looking at?" And I'll say, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean," I'll take "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, offend you. I apologize." But you still used your vision to get the situational awareness.
That's exactly right. Sensei, that's exactly why I said those two words.
Yeah, you need to be aware of what's going on, but you also don't want to use your eye contact to intimidate someone unless you really have to, because people are very sensitive to eye contact. And as a school teacher, I had some kids, they would look you straight in the eye whenever they talked with you. And until you got used to that with that kid, it was intimidating, even to me. And different people or different cultures will look at you differently, and you have to be aware of that as well. The advantage I found with, if I look through a person and I'm not really focused on anything, which is why they'll turn their head and say, "What are you looking at?" is because if you just look straight towards a person, your eyes are not focused, your peripheral vision is vastly expanded. And that's what's going to tell you 9 times out of 10 where an attack is coming from. The eye movement, as Eric said, can determine what they are thinking of doing. But I used to, when I was a high school teacher, department chair, occasionally the principal would have me sit in on interviews with other teachers, potential teachers. And I wouldn't ask any questions. And after that person left, he'd say, "Okay, Mr. Kirby, tell me what you thought of this person." And I'd go through the body language, whether I felt they looked relaxed, self-confident, nervous, apprehensive. When one question came up, their body position really changed. They looked to the right and up a number of times, which probably is an indicator they're not necessarily sure of what to say, or they may be lying. There are a lot of little things you can pick up on that can help you analyze the situation and sometimes diffuse it. It may be, so eye contact is important. As Eric said, where you put your hands, where they are. You don't want your hands in your pocket. You don't want your arms crossed. You don't want to do anything that looks like you're either, hands in the pocket is defensive. No, that's not defensive. That's just stupid, because that makes you look like a better victim. one of the neat things I learned, which I never had used, if you're wearing a jacket and you're approached by someone, you put one of your hands behind you, like you can reach something out of your pants from behind, because the person doesn't know what you have back there. On the other hand, it also entraps one of your own hands if the other person chooses to bear hug you, or it gives them a message that something may be coming. So you really have to be careful, as Eric said, with what your hands do if you're in a defensive position. If you can, stepping back is an excellent move. Trying to look relaxed if you can. Anything you can do to diffuse the situation. And if they want your stuff, you give it to them. I mean, that can all be replaced. You can't. But unless we get into a lot more detail on it, body language can either really help you or hurt you in a street situation. And it can help you avoid a street situation. It's where you walk down a sidewalk, in what direction are cars parked. I mean, all these things can go into reducing your chances of being a victim. And with all these, how do you say it, all these parameters of stuff that can go wrong, the trick is not to be paranoid about it. Because if you look or act paranoid, you have made yourself into a better victim.
Well, I've just got a question, Sensei.
Yes.
Considering how broad the subject is, we've got so many different viewpoints. Should we focus on, what do we focus on? Habits to make this subconscious, for instance. We can discuss it intellectually, and we've all had experiences of how it might play out. So I guess in terms of practices or something, is there something substantial we could do besides developing situational awareness?
Right.
In general?
I think what you can do and what you have to stress with your students is ideally they have to be able to, quote unquote, practice all these rules without appearing to be paranoid about it. It has to be natural behavior. Because if you start looking around a lot, or you clutch yourself, or you're shuffling a lot, or you're walking alone, or all these other things, it increases your chances of, it isn't going to make you a victim. It increases your chances of becoming a victim. It's like saying, there's some martial arts sensei say, if you learn my art, you will be invincible. Nobody will be able to attack you. You will turn them into dust, and the wrath of Darth Vader will descend upon them.
You've obviously been reading the Systema marketing, haven't you? That's what it sounds like. Anyway, sorry. I shouldn't say that.
I mean, I will never tell my students that. I said, all any martial art will do is improve your chances of avoiding a conflict and being able to survive that conflict.
Sure.
And then I can also say none of my students have ever been at the short end of it that I know of, have lost a physical conflict, which they haven't. But but I think, as I think it was Eric that said, who had said that you have to be self-confident. Who said that?
I think I had a comment.
Right. Yeah.
Are you self-confident
that,
and self-confident and aggressive?
Yeah.
So you are serious.
Yeah. Your key is to protect an image of self-confidence. That's number one. And all these things play into that. Like, don't go walking down a dark alley at night. Avoid the stupid stuff.
Yes, I have seen. Sorry, please go ahead.
No
Okay,
problem.
one thing is I have been served in Kosovo as a soldier, and then when we came home or on vacation, we always wanted excitement, and you always went to the dark places just because it's in you. And I learned that one thing is to ignore things totally. If you are, I once walked in an alley and I didn't know the street so well, but I just wanted to take the shortest route. And I saw there was a lot of going on that street, and it was dark. And the one way I managed to this was I was confident and showed that I don't care what is happening around me. I just walked on and get away with the situation that way, by not caring of the environment around me.
Sensei, to the point made earlier, I wanted to share something regarding a ready stance, a tachiwaza. This can be defensive. This can be aggressive. So can this. And there's something in between we call a casual tachiwaza. It's this right here, where I've got this hand ready for down block. I've got this ready for high block, straight blast. So I can strike from here really fast. I can defend from here really fast. And yet this doesn't look threatening, and it also doesn't look defensive. But it's also protecting my midsection here. Just come down, protect. So this is a really fine ready stance that if I'm in a face-to-face stare down situation, this casual tachiwaza serves a kind of a mid ground, defensive and offensive at the same time.
And the illusion is that you're thinking about what you're going to do.
I look like that guy that's, you know, the thinker statue, you know, and you're just standing like this, like, you know, and you can actually kind of go to the side a little bit if you want, you know, depending on how much disinterest you want to convey, or just be straight at them. But
That's a great addition. That's a great addition to the range of non-threatening positions you can take. I mean, this I think is a great invention. Anything non-threatening, but this does suggest defensiveness, as if you were expecting someone to do something. Your position is a little more thoughtful, and it looks significantly less ready, but really is ready. So there's a fine balance. These subjective things are almost as sensitive as things like eye contact, and striking a balance between being self-confident without being aggressive. And I think that can probably vary depending on the potential attacker. If it's a gang member, that might be a different warrant a different set of signals than having someone who's on drugs or some other type of person. So there's so many variables there, but that's a nice addition.
Yeah. One of the things that Seki also gave us as an alternate to the stand up here and show this alternate to the ready position like this was simply to have your hands crossed and you're back in your ready position. And this allows you to, as David said, this allows this to come up easily. This could go down easily or up. You know, the hands are still free to do whatever they need to do, and that's your key. But if you can convey an impression that you are not being aggressive, that's especially with all the video stuff that's out there, that's your key to not looking like an aggressor, which you don't want to look like, even though the reality is that all of these positions are positions that you can effectively defend yourself from or protect yourself from an attack. And if that, I guess part of the issue is if a defense attorney says, well, this is a pre-attack position, or this is a this is a pre-attack position, or this is a pre-attack position because that's what you've taught. I don't know how you deal with that. I haven't gotten that far in life yet. But
You'd
I-
have a hard time making that case, Sensei, because I stand like this, even when I'm not in a face down. That many
Right.
times I
I
stand
think-
like this. It's a thinking stance.
I think you're left with re-asking the question, well, then what am I supposed to do? And it shouldn't be, or not, what am I supposed to do? Then say, what would you do? Or what should I have done?
Cha-ching. Well put.
Yeah,
One thing I would say, just building off of Mr. Klug's suggestion, is but the number one thing is you have your hands in front of you. That they're not behind you, they're not in the back of your head or whatever. They're in front of you. Now to really make that posture work is have a nice handlebar stash or a go-to so you can stroke your beard while you're figuring out what you want to do. Maybe tweak your stats a bit.
well, I think as Dave did, the facial expressions that Dave gave are also, you can use that to make it look that you're not being threatening.
Okay. You can say a lot with a smirk.
Yeah, you can say a lot with a smirk.
Yeah, yeah. The other
Um,
thing about this is that any boxer will tell you having this hand close to your chin and your face, big advantage. I mean,
Yeah.
it's already there.
uh,
It doesn't have to move to there. So you know,
I think your tone of voice is also incredibly important. When I was a teacher, my students know that if I talk to them quietly, the whole class in a low voice, they knew there's going to be hell to pay. Well, I was loud talking. They knew everything. I could be shouting and screaming, and they knew the world was good. But if I became very quiet, and the same thing when you're talking to an individual, if you can smile a bit and put some intonation in your voice, it reduces the threat level. And there are times when I would talk to a person and say, I want you to turn around and leave. And you just look at them. And sometimes they'll do that because they realize now you are serious. If I said to them, hey, turn around and leave, I could say that to a person too, and they might do it, but it depends on how they're responding to me. So your voice and facial expressions are very important in terms of body language. And you demonstrated that beautifully with the, turning, all the other facial expressions that you had going there. So
there's something else. If you'll notice this morning, Thomas had on a self-defense shirt, Budoshin Jujitsu. Darren has on one right now. And I don't wear them out a lot, but when I do wear a self-defense shirt, I like to keep some of my business cards in my hip pocket or my rear pocket, because I'm more likely wearing a self-defense shirt to either have a conversation about somebody who wants to discuss self-defense, which is fine, but occasionally you get some person who just gets up in your face like they're going to challenge you because you're wearing a self-defense shirt. And if you can diffuse the situation after this right here, settle it down, reach back and say, I teach self-defense, here's my card. Then it's almost like, let's talk.
yeah,
We don't need to do this.
right. Jokingly, you could say, you can wear a shirt that says, I teach self-defense, or I teach whatever, karate, judo, jiu-jitsu, you have a whole list of them. And on the back, it says, number one rule, run like hell.
They'll see that as you're running away.
But anyway, yeah, so, I just wanted to cover the topic because there are so many variables, and you really, part of effective self-defense is understanding body language and using it to your advantage. And we do that, all of you do that in your professions. You do it in your personal life. You do it walking down the street. I mean, you're not a bump on a log. And the students need to realize that how their mannerisms can affect how other people treat them. And that's, you know, that's part of self-defense, I think. And that's why, you know, I have in the student handbook with, you know, treat people with respect. And, you know, I've had to deal with some real lowlifes. But if you try and deal with them in a respectable and cordial manner, it's amazing what it accomplishes. Because sometimes that's all they want. And that'll be a real quick gauge as to whether or not something else is going to happen. You know, if they bump into you and you say, you know, move over, airhead, that's not going to go off as well as, I'm being polite here, as, excuse me, are you okay? You know, I mean, it's a whole different ball game. And when my wife and I moved up to Valencia here back in the 1990s, and it still occurs today, we were walking into a shopping mall and two teenage boys opened the doors for us. We had never had that happen before in our lives, not in the San Fernando Valley. That would not happen. And because in certain places, people are simply more courteous than in others. I don't know whether it's upbringing or situational or what have you. And I'm sure we've all run into this. And it's how you respond to that. We always say, you know, we said thank you to them. That was kind of you. And anything you can do to give a positive response to a person is probably going to help your situation more than hurt it. No absolutes, but you know, it doesn't, I'd say it doesn't hurt to be kind or respectful or you know, or admit if you made a mistake. And that's all, to me, that's all part of the body language. And my German Shepherd has come in and said, Sensei, I need to go outside. Anyway,
He's a master of body language, the dog.
that's her
without
body
saying.
language. She doesn't say a thing to us. She just
The
moves.
tail tells us 10,000 things the mouth could never tell us.
Right. What else do we, there's another question here. Next one, I don't know if we want to get into it now or not. What happens when a student or participant doesn't believe your technique works on the street? Do we want to get into that today, or do we want to leave that for next time?
Sensei, I have a suggestion that's tangentially related to that. I'm just curious. I was going to give Darren a call, but it'd be really nice if we could, Darren, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but could you share some of what you taught in the class last week at Epic Dojo, or how that went, or any observations you had from your experience in their dojo? I think that would be profoundly valuable.
Yeah, I wasn't leading that. That was a Carlos Machado deal that I was participating in. And it was the week before. Last week I was in Dallas actually with Carlos again.
That's right.
Go over there, but that was just all BJJ stuff. They're doing a lot of ground techniques. My participation there is a little bit more than just an attendee in times. Just because of what we do and people wanting to know more about what we do versus just BJJ or ground aspects of things. But it was just my participation in one of the clinics there. And I do that just to support the local other dojos that I have a relationship with here in the local area. Here, I was in Louisiana week before last. The clinic was put on by the regional representative of the Carlos Machado organization, who I've done martial arts with for a long time. So I just tried to support their event, and I went over, participated in it, and then I also did some stand up for as well over there.
Gotcha.
Then last week I was in Dallas. That's where I was last weekend in Dallas, and Carlos had asked me to go over and do the same thing over by his flagship dojo, gym, whatever they call it. Most of the BJJ practitioners or programs refer to it as a gym. Over to their facility over there and do the same thing. And then I went off with another very close friend of mine who's been doing martial arts with me for a very long time, and competes in a lot of those combat sporting events, but is a black belt in BJJ, and he is also in Manami Jiu-Jitsu, EQ, and is a two-time world champion right now in the IBJJF as a black belt, and but he stays very, very close to traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu and has me out there doing clinics in Dallas, Texas. And I just do stand up. I do stand up Japanese jiu-jitsu form, which they're just in awe.
Right.
When people see, when people really see what they're limited to in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu environment versus what the Japanese jiu-jitsu environment is, they're just kind of like they're awestruck and like, wait, you can actually do that? Yeah.
That's
Darren, I'd like to, ask you a question. So when you're teaching the stand-up stuff, is it being recognized as the holistic traditional art, or what I find people are in BJJ are borrowing techniques and then just calling it BJJ? They're borrowing a lot of judo traditional techniques, but not giving due recognition. I don't know. What's your experience on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, to be honest with you.